On the morning of Saturday, July 14th, 1990, Matthew Nordbrock left his life in Orange, California, and drove into the Eastern Sierra for a day hike. He was 26. He had a permit, a small pack, decent shoes. The sky over Whitney Portal was clear. By 3:30 that afternoon, he was inside a stone hut at 14,505 feet, waiting out a thunderstorm with about 15 strangers. The hut had been built for exactly this, or so he'd been told. It had a metal roof. It happens here. It happened that Saturday afternoon. It happened 76 years before that, 4 days after the trail was even finished. It will happen again on a beautiful summer day to a healthy adult with a permit and a headlamp and a plan. The deadliest day hike in America is not in Alaska. It is not on Rainier or Hood or Denali. It is not a winter climb, and it is not technical. It is a summer walk. It has a paved parking lot. It has a permit lottery you can enter on your phone in bed. It has cell service at the trailhead and cheeseburgers at the store. That is the trap. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why the main Whitney Trail kills the people it kills. The physiology, the weather, the geometry of the mountain itself. You'll know the exact stretches where hikers die, by name and mile. And you'll know the one decision that separates the people who come home from the people who don't, and where on the mountain you have to make it before it is too late to make. The place first. Mount Whitney is the highest point in the contiguous United States. The summit sits at 14,505 feet. The main Whitney Trail starts at Whitney Portal at 8,360 feet in the desert scrub of the Eastern Sierra above the town of Lone Pine. From Portal to summit is over 6,100 feet of elevation gain. Round trip is roughly 22 miles. That's the whole hike. On paper, there is no cable car, there is no shuttle. Above the trailhead, there are no roads, no vehicles, no doors. Whatever happens to you up there happens on foot, and it happens far from help. Lone Pine's small hospital at the foot of the mountain is a critical access facility, not a trauma center. The nearest Level 1 trauma center is Community Regional in Fresno, about 75 nautical miles away by air, and much farther by road because there is a mountain range in the way. The nearest Level 2 is in Reno, over 230 miles away as a helicopter flies. The golden hour on Whitney is a fiction. You are always at least an hour from anyone who can save you, usually much more. The trail itself was cut in 1904 by an engineer named Gustav Marsh on top of the earlier path the Buffalo Soldiers had begun. It was completed on July 22nd of that year. 4 days later, 4 days, a young man named Bird Serby sat down on the bare summit plateau to eat lunch. He was 22. He worked for the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries. He'd hiked up with 2 colleagues on the brand new trail on a bright July afternoon, and he was sitting on the roof of the country eating. Lightning came out of a summer sky and killed him where he sat. The 2 men next to him survived. Bird Serby is the first recorded death on Mount Whitney. He was buried, the newspapers ran their 2 paragraphs, and 5 years later, in 1909, the Smithsonian Institution paid to build a small stone hut on the summit so that no one else would have to eat lunch in the open weather up there. That hut is the one Matthew Nordbrock walked into in 1990. Hold that thought. The mechanisms. Why this specific mountain on a specific kind of day kills the specific kind of person who buys a permit and shows up. Start with a number that hides in plain sight. Over 6,100 feet of gain in one push to a summit above 14,000. The Centers for Disease Control and the Wilderness Medical Society say the safe rate of altitude gain in sleeping elevation, once you're above about 9,000 feet, is roughly 1,650 feet per night. They also say to take 2 to 3 acclimatization nights before pushing high. The Whitney day hike blows past both. You leave the portal at 2 in the morning. You are at trail camp, 12,000 feet around dawn. You are at trail crest, 13,600 before lunch. You are on the summit ridge, a hair over 14,500 by early afternoon. Nobody has slept up there. Nobody has acclimatized. It isn't a hike. It's a physiology experiment done to yourself with your own body, one time, unrepeatable. Your body knows. It just doesn't have permission to speak until it's too loud to ignore. At altitude, the air is thinner, so every breath delivers less oxygen. Your heart speeds up. You get a headache. You feel nauseous. You lose your appetite exactly when you need calories most. That is acute mountain sickness, and on a Whitney day hike timeline, it usually arrives somewhere on the switchbacks, right when turning around is the last thing anyone wants to do. In a smaller number of people, it crosses into high-altitude pulmonary edema, where fluid drowns the lungs, or high-altitude cerebral edema, where the brain swells against the skull. Both kill. The only real treatment is descent. Every foot down is medicine. Every foot up is dose. Put weather on top of it. The Southern Sierra sits in the summer path of what meteorologists call the North American Monsoon. From July into September, moist air pushes up from the Gulf of Mexico, hits the eastern face of the Sierra, and detonates into afternoon thunderstorms. They are not always in the forecast. They often build in less than an hour. A ridge that was blue at 10 a.m. is black at 1 and lit up at 3. The guidance from every guidebook, every outfitter, every ranger is the same, and it is boring, and it is right. Be below trail crest by noon in July, August, and early September. Below the exposed ridge, below the granite antenna. You will not be below trail crest by noon. That's the other half of the trap. If you started at 3 a.m., you might be on the summit by 10 and back below crest by 1 if nothing goes wrong. If your friend is slow, if you cramped at 9,000, if you had to filter water at trail camp, if your headache made you sit for 20 minutes, if you took photos, if you talked to the ranger. You will be on the summit ridge in the afternoon, on the day the sky decides to open, standing on the highest exposed granite in the country, holding metal trekking poles. There's a reason lightning kills on Whitney and not on lower mountains near roads. Above treeline, there is nothing higher than you. The whole route from trail crest to the summit, about 2 miles of ridge, is exposed. There are no trees. There are no ravines to duck into. The stone hut on top is not shelter. It is, physically, a strike collector. Its masonry walls and its metal roof do exactly what lightning wants. The hikers in 1990 didn't know that. The hikers of today are told, in signs of the trailhead, in the permit paperwork, in every reputable guide, do not shelter in the summit hut during a lightning storm. If a storm is on you at the summit, get off the summit. Nobody wants to hear that on the summit. The water math. From Whitney Portal at 8,360 feet, you climb through desert scrub, then through pine, then into alpine granite. Trail camp at 12,000 feet at mile 6.3 is the last reliable water source on the mountain. Everything above it is dry. Above trail camp, you have to carry every drop you drink for the next roughly 10 miles of round-trip effort, up the switchbacks, along the ridge, to the summit, and back down. In summer sun, on granite that radiates heat like a stovetop, at an altitude where you are breathing twice as often as at sea level, an adult sweats and pants out water faster than any pack can carry. People start rationing. People start drinking straight from snowmelt trickles without filtering, and pick up giardia or worse, and start vomiting at 13,000 feet in the wind. Vomiting at 13,000 feet in the wind is not a stomach bug. It is a countdown. Then the temperature swing. In July, the trailhead at Whitney Portal can sit near 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the afternoon. The summit, that same day, can be below freezing. Wind at the ridge subtracts degrees off of a number that is already low. You started the hike sweating through your shirt at 4 a.m. You are on the ridge at noon, in a soaked shirt, in a wind you didn't dress for, and the sky has just started to close in. Under all of it, the crown jewel of the trap is the geometry of the trail itself. From trail camp, the path climbs a set of switchbacks, known as the 99 switchbacks. 2.2 miles, about 1,700 feet of gain. 99 turns stacked into a granite wall. About halfway up sits a stretch of about 50 to 100 feet with a steel cable handrail bolted into the rock. The cables face north, away from the sun. Snow and ice collect there and stay long after everything else on the mountain has cleared. That short section is the reason the cable rail was installed. And it is exactly where hikers slip. Above the cables, on the switchbacks and on trail crest, the ground falls away. A slip is not a stumble. A slip is a slide. And there is nothing to grab. That's the mountain. That's the machine. Watch the machine work. Consider Bird Serby again. 22 years old, federal employee, on a brand new trail with 2 coworkers, on a summer day, at lunch, on a summit that had not yet earned its reputation because it had not yet had time. The trail was 4 days old. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't inexperienced by the standards of 1904. He was a working man, in condition, walking a graded path a government engineer had just certified. The mountain didn't care about his resume. The strike came out of a July sky. The 2 men beside him lived. He didn't. The hut you have heard about since kindergarten, the little stone shelter with the plaque, exists because of what happened to him. Everything about the mountain's warning system starts with a lunch that never got finished. Whatever objection you had about him, old-time hiker, unlucky, times were different. The mountain does not care about that either. 86 years later, on July 14th, 1990, Matthew Nordbrock is on the summit. He is 26. He is from Orange County. He has done this hike right. He has a permit. He has gear. He has friends. He has, according to his family, already survived a lightning strike once before as a boy in a rowboat in Arizona. Think about what it takes to walk up a mountain for a second try. After that, a storm builds. About 15 hikers duck into the Smithsonian hut on the summit. The rain drums on the metal roof. They wait. At around 3:30 p.m., a bolt hits the hut. The metal roof and the granite walls do what metal roofs and granite walls do. Current fills the building. 13 people are treated and released. 1 is hospitalized. Nordbrook is airlifted off the mountain with 4 other men before nightfall. He is dead shortly after 9 p.m. If you were about to think, well, he sheltered in a building, that's on him. Remember what the building was called. Smithsonian Institution Shelter. Shelter. He did what the name told him to do. It was the era before every trailhead had a sign. The mountain didn't care about the naming either. The pattern the mountain runs is patient. It does not require a bad decision. It requires no decision at all. 15 years later, on the west side of the massif, at a place called Sandy Meadow, at about 10,600 feet, a full day's hike from the nearest road, a party is caught in a July afternoon storm. 12 people are struck at around 4:28 p.m. 2 die, 1 on the scene, 1 at the hospital. 8 are, at first, unconscious or paralyzed. 3 need CPR in the meadow. 5 helicopters, 2 ambulances, 2 hospitals, 29 personnel. It takes them 4 hours and 20 minutes to get everyone off. 4 hours and 20 minutes. On a mountain where the entire summit lightning window is roughly the same length as your Costco run. The peer-reviewed medical write-up of that incident is now taught to wilderness physicians. The victims are, by convention and out of decency, unnamed in the literature. They were not on the summit. They were in a meadow, in summer, in the afternoon. That is the range of the killing, not just the granite antenna at the top, the soft green places too. You may still be telling yourself, I would not be on the ridge in the afternoon. I would turn around. I would be smart. Fine. On Saturday, October 25th, 2025, a hiker named Paul Jonathan Ortiz Jr., 29, from Chula Vista, a father of 2, was on the 99 switchbacks above the cables. This was not a July heat death. This was shoulder season, in early snow conditions, wind driving snow into hikers' faces, trail invisible in patches. Another hiker, Wes Ostgaard, had passed Ortiz on the way up, then turned around because the mountain had turned. On his descent, Ostgaard found Ortiz's body. Ortiz had slid roughly 70 feet. High winds delayed the helicopter recovery until Monday. His sister, when asked, said only, "Mother Nature is cruel." The Ortiz case is not a summer case, and we're not going to pretend it is. It is a lesson about the ground. That ground, the 99 switchbacks, the cables, the ridge, is the ground the day hiker crosses every trip in every season. In shoulder season, it collects ice that lingers because the cables face away from the sun. In monsoon season, it collects hail and rain and the same slick rock. In August, it collects sun-blasted grit that acts like ball bearings. A slip on that geometry is not a stumble. It is a slide down granite you cannot claw back up. Even the calendar you thought was safe is a lie the mountain lets you believe. On May 3rd through 5th, 2024, a full winter storm hit the Sierra and dropped more than a foot of snow at upper elevations. 2 mountaineers, Andrew Niziel, 28, and Patty Bolin, 29, a fresh UC Davis PhD, went missing on the Mountaineers route. Their bodies were found on May 8th and 9th. That's not a day hiker case, and I'm putting it here for one reason. May. Late spring. Sequoia and lupine season on the valley floor. Full winter, 2 miles up. On the same mountain. On the same weekend that people at Whitney Portal are grilling burgers in shorts. That same week, a rockfall took another hiker on the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek below the main trail. He was struck by falling rock and already gone when the first Inyo County SAR member reached him. He is unnamed in the reporting, so he is unnamed here. Inyo SAR's public statement that week was clean and cold. Early spring conditions prevail on the mountain. Treacherous steep snow, loose rock, variable weather. 3 deaths in 1 week on one mountain. May. The question you should be asking. If the mountain is this efficient, how does anyone survive going wrong on it? Meet Cameron Renee, 22, trail name Flamingo. In May of 2026, she was several weeks into a Pacific Crest Trail thru hike, and she'd summited exactly one other mountain in her life, and it was much smaller than this one. She got about 2 miles from the Whitney summit at somewhere around 13,000 to 13,500 feet, and she began to vomit. She had been drinking, unfiltered, from a mountain water source. She had acute mountain sickness. She was above 13,000 feet, alone. The right move was down. Every foot down is medicine. She did the wrong move. She pitched her tent where she was and spent the night alone in near freezing temperatures at 13,500 feet. That is the mistake the coverage keeps circling back to, and every mountain medic in the country nodded when they read it. Because that is the choice that ends things. Sleep is not rest at altitude. Sleep is a slower version of the same problem. 2 things saved her. First, she carried a satellite emergency communication device, and she triggered it during the night. Second, in the morning, summit-bound hikers heard groaning from her tent. 2 of them helped her descend about 2 miles to Guitar Lake, where she vomited up all the water she had been drinking. The National Park Service, in contact through her satellite beacon since the SOS, dispatched a helicopter to Guitar Lake. She was airlifted out. She lived because she had bought a piece of plastic before her trip, and she pressed the button on it. She lived because 2 strangers, on their own summit bid, decided to spend their morning on someone else's problem. She lived because she was close enough to a lake with enough room to land a helicopter. She lived because of everything that could have gone wrong and didn't. She could as easily not have. If places like this are why you never take a summer drive to a trailhead for granted anymore, that's what this channel is for. There is another pattern in the SAR logs worth sitting with. A December hoist of a hiker at 13,600 feet with severe acute mountain sickness, unable to descend, brought out because their partner had a satellite messenger and pressed the button. A hiker airlifted after drinking from an untreated source and going down on the trail. These are not headline cases. They are the routine of Inyo County Search and Rescue, which responds to about 50 emergencies a year, with the majority on Mount Whitney concentrated in summer. Every year, every summer, the same trail, the same mistakes, the same helicopter. The numbers you can actually use. Rule 1. Above 9,000 feet, treat every 1,000 feet of gain as its own dose. The CDC's safe sleeping altitude gain is roughly 1,650 feet per night, and they recommend 2 to 3 acclimatization nights before you push high. On a Whitney day hike, you will violate that by thousands of feet in hours. If you are going to try this hike, spend at least a night, ideally 2, sleeping at Lone Pine or Whitney Portal Campground first. Your body needs the runway. Rule 2. Water is math, not vibes. Above trail camp, 12,000 feet, mile 6.3. There is no reliable water. Carry enough out of trail camp for the round trip to the summit and back. Filter or treat every drop you take on below it. And do not drink from summit-side trickles unfiltered on the way down because you are tired. The bug that made Cameron Renee vomit at 13,000 feet is in the water. Rule 3. Be below trail crest by noon in July, August, and early September. Not trying to be. Not if things go well. Below. If you are still climbing at 11:30, turn around at trail crest and eat your lunch there and go home. The ridge is a granite antenna, and you cannot outrun a monsoon cell on a 2-mile ridge above treeline. Rule 4. If lightning finds you above treeline anyway, do not shelter in the summit stone hut. It is not shelter. Get off the summit. Get low. Off the ridge. Away from metal. Off your poles. Squat on an insulating pad if you have one. Feet together, so a ground current has less path to run through you. This is not fun. It is what wilderness medicine says works. Rule 5. Carry a satellite communicator. A phone will not work up there in an emergency. The Inyo SAR call logs are full of hikers who lived because a partner or a stranger pressed the SOS button on a device that costs less than one nice pair of boots. Cameron Renee is alive because of that button. Rule 6. This is the one that decides everything. Turn around at trail camp at 12,000 feet at mile 6.3 if any of the following is true. You could not finish your food. You could not keep water down. Your headache is behind your eyes, not on the surface of your head. You are already moving slower than your plan. The clouds over the crest are stacking, not scattering. That is the decision. That is the whole ball game. Not on the summit, not at the hut, not on the ridge, at trail camp, before the switchbacks, before the cables, before the 99 turns, before the exposed granite. Every person lost that we have talked about in every season was above that line when the mountain moved on them. The people who came home turned around when their body asked them to. The ones who didn't. One more thing before we go back to the hut. Whitney does not keep an official cumulative death count. Think about that. The highest point in the contiguous United States, walked by tens of thousands of ticket holders a year, and the mountain does not have a running tally on any government wall. The estimates cluster around 1 to 2 deaths a year, some years more, and the SAR mission count runs around 50. It is not the deadliest mountain on paper because it does not keep the paper. It is the deadliest day hike in America because the day hike is what makes it lethal. A slow climber with 3 nights on the mountain acclimatizes. A day tripper with a permit and a headlamp does not. The trail is not the killer. The clock is. The mountain will still be here long after the last person who feared it. It doesn't chase anyone. It has never chased anyone. It doesn't need to. It just waits by the trail you were always going to take. On the summer weekend you were always going to book. With the storm cell that was always going to build. Which brings us back inside the hut. Matthew Nordbrook is 26. He is inside a stone building that was built because a young federal fisheries worker died on that spot in July of 1904. The building was built as shelter. The sign at the trailhead in 1990 did not tell him what today's signs tell everyone. The metal roof over his head does what metal roofs do. 13 of the people standing in there with him will walk out with burns and stories. 1 will go to a hospital and stay. 5 will be airlifted. 4 of the 5 will live. He will not. The shelter that wasn't. The hut built for the last man who died the same way, before anyone thought to tell the next one. That is the mountain's whole trick, in one small stone room. It ends the people who did what they were told. It ends them in summer, on beautiful afternoons, in a building whose name promised something the building could not deliver. Turn around at trail camp. Subscribe, or the next one of these will be about your favorite trail, and by the time you're watching it, you will already be past 12,000 feet.